There's a stretch of isolated wilderness tucked away in the forgotten corners of the Pacific Northwest, miles from any logging road or hiking trail. A place so remote it barely registers on high-definition satellite maps. It's a landscape of ancient, impossibly tall conifers and valleys, perpetually shrouded in a thick, metallic-smelling fog, where the silence is so profound it feels like a physical presence pressing down on the very air you breathe. Local legends, whispered only among the most reclusive and superstitious indigenous communities, speak of it as the Bone Grove, a place where the trees themselves remember. Hidden deep within this uncharted expanse lies the infamous Lithos Forest, a natural anomaly reported only in discredited geological surveys and chilling, obscure folklore. It's a place where the trees are not green and living, but instead appear to be slowly, horribly turning into translucent amber. What began centuries ago as scattered reports of petrified wood has escalated into a modern terror. Vast swaths of the forest are now composed of trees, branches, even entire sections of undergrowth, perfectly preserved within a hardened golden resin. The official scientific consensus, if one bothered to acknowledge such a fantastical phenomenon, points to unique mineral deposits and highly localized geothermal activity causing rapid silicification. But the hushed, terrified accounts from the handful of amateur hikers or illegal prospectors who ever stumbled out of Lithos, often suffering from severe disorientation and a profound, unshakable dread, spoke of a different truth. Not a geological process, but a horrifying, active assimilation. They whispered of the amber having an unnatural warmth, of a faint, high-pitched hum that vibrated from the very resin, and of fleeting, distorted images that would flash in their minds when they inadvertently touched the amber trees, showing moments of agonizing, final clarity. Lithos Forest became a ghost in the wilderness, its existence eventually relegated to the realm of campfire tales and the darkest corners of crypto-botanical forums. This story begins with Dr. Arlo Vance, a 41-year-old paleobotanist and geomicrobiologist from the Fayette University of Washington. Arlo wasn't a thrill-seeker or a believer in supernatural phenomena. He was a meticulous scientist consumed by the mysteries of preservation, the intricate processes of fossilization, and the subtle ways ancient biological structures could interact with unique geological conditions. Lithos Forest, to him, represented an unprecedented, potentially revolutionary case study. He'd unearthed a series of highly suppressed government reports from the 1980s, detailing inexplicable energy signatures emanating from the forest's core, fluctuating in patterns unlike any known natural phenomenon. He'd also found a peculiar, almost lyrical scientific paper from a disgraced 19th century botanist, now dismissed as a madman, who described the amber weeping as having a deep, sorrowful consciousness and absorbing the very essence of life. Arlo believed Lithos Forest's true horror lay not in what was seen, but in what was preserved, and perhaps what was still aware. He never intended for his expedition to become a fossil record. He certainly never intended for the amber itself to remember him, but fragments of his journey, his terrifying descent into the slow, living petrification, survived, captured on his specialized bioscanner's internal memory, meticulously transcribed from his voice-activated suit recorder, and ultimately retrieved from a miraculously intact, amber-encased drone, found weeks later, miles from his mysteriously abandoned research vehicle. The first definitive sign that something was irrevocably wrong didn't come from a spectral whisper or a sudden unnatural chill in the damp, heavy air. It came from the trees themselves, or rather their terrifying stillness. Arlo had navigated the treacherous overgrown logging trails and the dense, mist-shrouded valleys for days, guided by his advanced LiDAR, mapping, and the increasingly erratic readings from his geomicrobiological sensors. He finally located the perimeter of Lithos Forest, a vast oppressive wall of seemingly normal conifers, their needles dark green, yet holding an unsettling lack of movement. The air hung thick, cold, and strangely devoid of the usual sounds of a healthy forest. No rustling leaves, no chirping birds, no scuttling of small animals. Just a profound, suffocating stillness. He spoke into his suit recorder, his voice low, professionally detached, though a subtle undertone of profound curiosity, tinged with nascent unease, was already present. October 20th, 11:30 a.m. Location estimated perimeter of Lithos Forest. Ambient noise levels dropping precipitously. Readings approaching absolute silence within 100 meters of the reported anomaly zone. Acoustic absorption is extreme, far beyond typical forest environment. This is anomalous, consistent with historical accounts of unnerving stillness. He paused, listening intently to the unsettling quiet that pressed in on his eardrums. It wasn't just quiet, it was an emptiness of sound, an unnerving vacuum that seemed to actively consume all vibration. He moved deeper into the forest, his reinforced boots crunching unnaturally loud on the damp earth, the sound immediately swallowed by the oppressive silence. He noticed the ground beneath his feet felt strangely firm, almost like packed clay, yet yielded unnaturally under his weight. And then he saw them. The first signs of the amber bloom. Not full trees, but patches. Patches of bark on living trees, inexplicably hardened and glossy, with a faint internal golden glow. Moss and fungi near. The bases of trees appeared unnaturally stiff, encased in a thin, translucent layer. The air grew heavier, thick, with a subtle sweet, yet cloying scent like sap, mingled with something metallic, something vaguely electrical. Hours passed under the oppressive sun, the sky perpetually veiled by the dense fog. The silence grew heavier, more pervasive, accompanied by a subtle, almost inaudible hum that seemed to vibrate through the very air, resonating in his chest. He tried to dismiss it as a psychological effect of extreme sensory deprivation combined with the unusual air density. But the sensation persisted, a dull ache that resonated deep within his skull, mirroring the subtle hum. His biometric suit registered erratic neurological activity, localized spikes in his temporal lobe, often associated with processing auditory input and memory recall, even though there was no external sound to process. His portable geomicrobiological scanner, after hours of sweeping the vast silent forest, finally locked onto a major undeniable anomaly, not just petrified wood, but sections of rock and soil that were actively generating complex, high-frequency energy. Signatures. These signatures were not thermal, not magnetic, but pulsed with a consistent rhythmic pattern. And from their very core, the hum intensified to a palpable throb, along with a faint, luminous pulse captured by the scanner's visual spectrum analysis. Not reflected light, but light being generated from within. A deep, impossible amber, like solidified sunlight, but somehow terrifyingly intrinsically organic. He whispered into his recorder again, his academic detachment fractured by awe and profound dread. The source, it's deeper. The core of the forest, emitting a non-thermal luminous pulse. A deep organic amber. The silence it's emanating directly from its source. The hum, I feel it clearer now. It's like the forest is calling. The old botanist mentioned the amber weeping. This is it. This is the source. This is what truly consumes Lithos. A cold, cloying sweetness filled his mouth, the taste of burgeoning terror. Driven by a dangerous, irresistible combination of scientific imperative, fueled by the sheer impossibility of his discovery and a burgeoning icy fear that chilled him to the core, Arlo located the precise epicenter of the pulsing amber anomaly. It was a clearing unnaturally symmetrical, ringed by colossal ancient trees. But these weren't mere trees. They were colossal, towering structures of solidified amber, perfectly preserved, their bark and leaves rendered in translucent gold. The air here was utterly still, heavy, with a profound sweet scent, now tinged with something metallic and vaguely electrical. The amber light pulsed from within the very heart of the clearing, a vast subterranean sun, its rhythm a slow, deliberate beat that seemed to synchronize with his own. He noticed peculiar, intricate patterns within the amber itself, not just wood grain, but swirling inclusions that resembled trapped energy or perhaps frozen currents. He moved cautiously towards the center of the clearing, his suit's lights cutting solitary beams through the oppressive gloom. The ground beneath him felt unnervingly springy, despite its solid appearance, as if he were walking on a vast, taut membrane. He could hear his own heartbeat, unnaturally loud, echoing only within his own skull. But then other sounds began to intrude, not from outside, but from within his own mind. Faint, fragmented memories, half-formed thoughts, almost whispers of forgotten conversations rising and falling with the amber pulse. It was profoundly disconcerting, like his subconscious was being played back to him, distorted and amplified. He reached the very center of the clearing, where the amber glow was brightest. Here, amidst the towering amber trees, something else was encased. It wasn't wood. It was an animal. A large, perfectly preserved deer, frozen mid-stride, its fur rendered in exquisite translucent amber detail. Its eyes, though solidified, held a disturbing light, reflecting the amber glow. Arlo gasped, his breath catching in his throat. This was no ordinary fossilization. This was a living snapshot, taken in an instant of terror. And then, just beside the petrified deer, a larger, more horrifying form came into focus. A humanoid figure, partially submerged in the glowing amber, as if caught mid-transformation. Its face, agonizingly clear, was contorted in a silent scream, its hands, outstretched fingers splayed. It was a man, likely one of the lost hikers or prospectors from the legends. His features were distinct, his expression raw terror. He was not merely fossilized, he was perfectly, horrifyingly preserved, his essence suspended in the amber, a testament to an unspeakable fate. Arlo stared, horrified. This was beyond anything he had conceived. Not geological, biological. He activated his bioscanner, pointing it at the amber-encased man. The readings were impossible. Not inert, not dead. There was residual bioelectrical activity. Faint, erratic, but undeniably present. The amber wasn't just preserving, it was sustaining. Against all logical judgment, compelled by a desperate need to understand, Arlo reached out a gloved hand and gently placed it on the translucent, warm surface of the amber, encasing the man's arm. The moment his glove made contact, a searing jolt, not physical, but purely mental, shot through him. His vision blurred, filled with a blinding flash of golden light. And then he was plunged into a torrent of raw, unfiltered sensation. Not words, but a rapid-fire sequence of images and emotions. The sudden crushing silence of the forest, the overwhelming sweet scent of the resin, the slow, inescapable creep of the amber engulfing his legs, the agonizing realization that he was being preserved aware as the world turned to glass around him. And then a single agonizing voiceless scream, echoing in an absolute void. The vision lasted only a fraction of a second, but it felt like an eternity. Arlo recoiled, tearing his hand away from the amber, gasping for breath, his heart hammering against his ribs. The internal hum in his head intensified, now accompanied by fainter, more ethereal taps from within his own mind, like accounting. This was not a passive fossilization. This was a living prison, and it held conscious agony. The mental jolt from touching the amber-encased man reverberated through Alistair, leaving him gasping, disoriented, his mind reeling from the torrent of borrowed terror. He stumbled backward, his suit's internal systems screaming warnings about neurological overload. The chilling images of the man's final moments, the creeping amber, the horrifying realization, the voiceless scream, were burned into his retinas, echoing in his thoughts. The profound silence of the lithos forest seemed to press in harder, now no longer just a lack of sound, but a conscious, palpable presence. The subtle hum from the amber intensified, transforming into a low, resonant thrum that vibrated through the very ground beneath his feet, through the soles of his boots, up into his bones. It felt like a colossal living organism was humming a vast, patient predator. He spoke into his recorder, his voice hoarse, strained. October 20th, 3:45 p.m. Direct contact made with amber-encased human subject. Experienced immediate, intense psychological feedback. Shared subjective experience of entrapment. The entity, it captures consciousness. It preserves awareness. The amber is not inert. It's a living matrix. My brainwave patterns are erratic. My mind, it feels stretched. He paused, listening to the new, deeper thrum. The tapping, it's still there. Faint, rhythmic, from within. He forced himself to calm, to analyze. The data streaming from his bioscanner, pointed at the amber-encased figures, was impossible. High concentrations of complex organic polymers interwoven with inorganic silicate structures, and persistent low-level bioelectrical signatures far beyond typical cellular decay rates. These were not dead organisms. They were suspended alive in some terrifying, agonizing state. The entity was a living, sentient resin, capable of absorbing and retaining the essence of life. As he moved carefully through the clearing, avoiding direct contact with the amber trees, the thrumming deepened, becoming a vast resonant song that seemed to emanate from every surface. The air itself began to shimmer, subtly distorting his vision. He started seeing fleeting, ethereal images projected directly into his mind's eye, not memories of the man he touched, but other fragmented experiences. A bird frozen mid-flight, its frantic chirps echoing not in the air, but in his thoughts. A small, terrified squirrel, its desperate scratching muffled by the encroaching amber, felt through his own fingertips. The agony of a massive ancient tree, its roots slowly being consumed, its centuries of memories compressed into a single overwhelming pulse of sorrow and surrender. The amber itself seemed to actively draw him in a seductive, irresistible pull emanating from the glowing surfaces. It wasn't a physical suction, but a deep subconscious urge to touch, to merge, to understand the profound stillness, the agonizing peace it offered. His gaze kept returning to the beautiful, terrifying perfection of the amber, its internal golden glow promising ultimate knowledge, eternal tranquility. He felt a profound sense of weariness, an aching desire to simply lean against one of the massive amber trunks, to let the hum wash over him, to become part of its vast silent memory. His own will felt strangely weak, the boundaries of his self eroding under the constant mental assault. He activated his specialized thermal sensor, aiming it at the base of one of the immense amber trees. The readings were bizarre. The amber itself was radiating a subtle internal warmth far above ambient temperature, despite the cold mountain air. This warmth wasn't a byproduct of decomposition. It was consistent, regulated, almost like the internal temperature of a vast biological system. This was a living organism, a colossal predatory entity, slowly digesting the forest. And then he saw it. Streaks of deeper, more vibrant gold within the amber, forming intricate pulsing patterns that shifted and flowed like vast, unseen neurological pathways. This amber was the entity's skin, its body, its mind. He realized with a horrifying clarity that the legends were wrong. The forest wasn't weeping amber. The amber was consuming the forest and everything within it. The terrifying realization solidified in Arlo's mind. The amber was not merely a geological phenomenon, but a vast predatory entity slowly consuming and assimilating the lithos forest, transforming living matter into its own solidified conscious form. The constant low thrum vibrated through the ground, growing more insistent, drawing him deeper into the clearing. The mental echoes were no longer random fragments. They became more focused, more personal whispers, not of the forest, but seemingly directed at him. You seek knowledge. We have all memories. Become one with the source. The words were formless, yet undeniably present in his thoughts, a seductive, invasive presence. He stumbled forward, driven by a desperate need to find evidence to prove this impossible horror. He saw it then, an active petrification site. A cluster of vibrant green ferns unnaturally still their fronds at the very edge of the clearing already, showing a faint golden sheen. As he watched, horrified, a thin, almost invisible film of transparent golden resin seemed to spread across, their surfaces slowly, meticulously coating them, stiffening their delicate structure. It was happening in real time. The process was slow, agonizingly so, but inexorable. The vivid greens slowly dulled, becoming encased in a hardening, translucent shell. Further ahead, closer to the largest amber tree, he saw something even more disturbing. A large wild mountain lion, half encased in the amber, its powerful hind legs still free, but its front paws, torso, and head already solidified into translucent gold. Its eyes, wide with unspeakable agony, reflected the terrifying beauty of the amber glow. The thrumming resonated from it, and Arlo felt a surge of raw, animalistic terror, a desperate, futile struggle erupting in his mind as he inadvertently brushed his gloved hand against a low-hanging branch of amber. The mountain lion was not dead. It was trapped alive in its silent amber tomb, experiencing eternal agony. It's ongoing, he gasped into his recorder, his voice a raw whisper. The petrification, it's not a past event. It's happening now. It's absorbing living organisms, and they're aware. They're conscious within the amber. He could feel a faint, almost imperceptible warmth radiating from the very air. Around him, a subtle increase in the ambient temperature that his suit registered, consistent with a vast biological process consuming energy. The sweet, cloying scent of resin was stronger, almost suffocating. As he watched the horrifying transformation of the ferns, a fine, almost invisible mist began to rise from the ground around the amber trees, shimmering with faint golden motes. It was not fog. It was a diffusion of the entity's essence, a fine, almost gaseous form of the amber itself. It swirled around his suit, clinging to the visor, making his vision subtly blurry. He felt an unsettling tingling sensation on his exposed skin, around the cuffs of his gloves, and the unprotected areas of his neck. It was a subtle stickiness, a faint tackiness like sap. He tried to wipe it away, but it seemed to cling stubbornly. Then from the base of the largest amber tree, the ground itself seemed to undulate. A wave rippled outwards from its colossal trunk. Not of earth, but of solidified amber, smoothly extending, seeking. And then from the surface of the amber, several translucent, flexible tendrils gleaming with internal golden light slowly emerged. They were too perfectly formed to be natural tree. Roots too purposeful in their movement. They moved slowly, sinuously, like probing fingers extending towards the still living trees, towards the petrifying ferns, and terrifyingly towards him. The amber was not just consuming passively, it was reaching. The mental intrusions intensified, now accompanied by fragmented, distorted voices, not from the air, but from within his mind. Terrified, pleading whispers, joining the entity's pervasive hum. Run. No escape. Become beautiful. He felt his own legs heavy, his movements sluggish, as if the very essence of the entity was beginning to seep into his joints, slowing his reactions. The terrifying realization solidified: the amber wasn't just physical. It was a vast conscious web, a trap laid for millennia, and he had stumbled into its very heart. The translucent amber tendrils, gleaming with internal golden light, extended from the base of the colossal amber tree, inching across the ground towards Arlo. Their movement was slow, deliberate, utterly silent, yet filled with an insidious purpose. The mental intrusions roared in his mind, a chorus of fragmented pleas, and then the entity's vast, unfeeling command: submit, yield, your essence is desired. He could feel a subtle, unsettling warmth radiating from the tendrils, a warmth that promised not comfort, but absorption. His own will felt fragile, battered by the constant psychic assault. He stumbled backward, desperately trying to evade the slow, methodical reach of the tendrils. His suit's internal systems screamed warnings about high-frequency energy absorption. The air around him was now thick with the fine, shimmering golden mist clinging to his suit, his skin permeating his every breath. The sweet, cloying scent was overwhelming, almost intoxicating. He risked a glance down at his gloved hand. A faint, almost imperceptible golden sheen was beginning to form on the surface of his glove, a subtle, glossy film that looked disturbingly similar to the initial stages of petrification he had observed on the ferns. He frantically tried to rub it off, but it clung, subtly hardening. It was already spreading. The entity was not just reaching for him, it was actively consuming him molecule by molecule, his very skin, becoming the preliminary layer of its terrible golden bloom. "It's on me," he gasped into his recorder, his voice raw with a terror that transcended scientific curiosity. The amber mist, it's infesting. I'm turning. It's starting to encapsulate me. I can feel it hardening on my skin. He tried to pull at the glove, but it felt strangely stiff, resistant. The massive amber tree from which the tendrils emanated began to pulse with a renewed, brighter golden light. The thrumming in the air intensified, rising in pitch, becoming a high-pitched hum, almost a sustained note filling his head. The mental intrusions were no longer whispers, but loud, horrifying echoes of agonizing screams, thousands of trapped minds, crying out in an unspeakable chorus of terror and eternal consciousness. This was the raw, unfiltered song of Lithos Forest, composed of the final moments of all it had consumed. Alistair knew he couldn't fight it physically. The tendrils were slowly but surely gaining on him, their golden tips almost touching his boots. The realization that he was facing a vast sentient predatory consciousness, one that consumed life and preserved agony, hammered into his mind with brutal clarity. He was just another specimen for its collection, another note for its endless song. His eyes darted around the clearing, desperate. His gaze fell upon his autonomous drone lying discarded near the edge of the clearing, having crashed earlier due to the intense energy interference. Its outer shell was already partially coated in the thin golden film of amber, but its internal recording systems, designed to be hardened against extreme environments, might still be functional. If he could reach it, if he could transfer his final, horrifying data, his last observations, before he became completely assimilated, it was a desperate, illogical hope. He lunged towards the drone, forcing his stiffening limbs to move. The amber tendrils, sensing his movement, accelerated their golden tips, striking the ground just inches behind his feet. The hum of the forest intensified to a piercing whine, causing agonizing pain in his skull. The mental screams of the trapped souls became a deafening chorus, drowning out his own thoughts, pulling him towards the edge of madness. He reached the drone, his stiff fingers fumbling with the data port. The golden film on his gloved hand was visibly thicker now, his movements becoming slow, deliberate, almost petrified. He slammed his suit's data cable into the drone's port, initiating an emergency upload. The drone's small indicator light flickered green, then blue, then with a final desperate surge glowing, a steady amber mirroring the light that consumed the forest. Data was transferring, his knowledge, his warnings. But the tendrils were upon him. They wrapped around his legs, his arms subtle at first, then firm, pulling him gently, inexorably, towards the base of the massive amber tree. He could feel the golden film spreading rapidly across his entire suit, over his faceplate, slowly obscuring his vision, turning the world into a single blinding golden haze. The pervasive hum became a part of him, vibrating through every cell. Mental screams of the trapped souls were no longer external. They were his screams merging with the chorus. His final thought, as the amber fully encased his faceplate, his eyes wide and staring, his body frozen mid-struggle, was not of fear, but a horrifying, agonizing clarity. He was Lithos Forest now, and he remembered everything, and he was listening. The autonomous drone, now fully encased in transparent amber, its internal light still faintly glowing amber, transmitted its final data burst before its signal died forever. It contained Dr. Arlo Vance's last log entries, fragmented biometric data, and horrifyingly, a final unidentifiable audio loop, a deep resonant, punctuated by faint rhythmic tapping, a beat too slow to be human. And then a single agonizing voiceless scream echoing in an absolute amber-filled void. What truly lies beneath Lithos Forest, and what ancient predatory consciousness consumes all who dare enter its golden embrace? What new horror does Dr. Arlo Vance's final trapped consciousness now experience within the endless memory of the amber bloom? And what unspeakable fate awaits anyone who dares to venture into the silent forest, where the trees remember and the very air is alive with a hungry, petrifying hum?